All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I think we have a quorum. So we'll bring the Public Safety, Finance, and Strategic Support Committee to order on Thursday, September 21st, 2023 at 1:30 p.m. Before we begin, I want to remind the Public Safety, Finance, and Strategic Support Committee members and members of the public to follow our code of conduct at meetings. This includes commenting on specific agenda item only and addressing the full body. Public speakers will not engage in conversation with the chair, council members, or staff. All members of the Public Safety, Finance, Strategic Support Committee, staff, and public are expected to refrain from abusive language. Repeated failure to comply with the code of conduct, which will disturb, disrupt, or impede the orderly conduct of this meeting, may result in removal from the meeting. This meeting of the Public Safety, Finance, and Strategic Support Committee will now come to order. Can the clerk's office please call the roll?
Batra.
Present.
Torres.
Present.
Kamei. Duan.
Present.
And Jimenez.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a quorum. We're going to move on to review of the work plan. Item B1. We'll go to public comment first and see if there are any comments. And we need a motion for the work plan. I feel like I've asked this before. Yeah, okay. So entertain a motion, but you can also wait to see if we have public comment.
Hi.
Oh, actually, give me a second. Before we start public comment, let me just say that, Blair, I'm sure you're listening along with other folks. We have a good amount of items today, so we're going to limit public comment to 1 minute instead of 2. I think just for the sake of simplicity and just for ease of getting this meeting done on time. So go ahead, public comment on the consent calendar.
Zoom caller Blair B.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here, understood. I was just going to offer in reviewing the work plan for the next 6 months, I didn't see any of the items about working on I can't remember the term, but it's police deportment. I know there's a better word than that, but building better practices, how the police actually practice. That was an item that was originally scheduled for April. That's when the fentanyl issues came up, so you put it off till June. And then because the IPA left in June, you put it off again. That is an item that should have some sort of public review time in the next 6 months, and an acknowledgement at least should be in order. And as I've always been stating, please work on an acknowledgement of the fentanyl issue itself with the SJPOA and how that process is going. Please make that an open subject matter and acknowledge what's going on in some way with it publicly and openly here at public meeting time. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Zoom caller Paul Soto.
Yes, Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. I have to agree with Blair that the issue of slinging dope out of the police department union, it poses some issues. Number one, and neither one is a good answer. Either the officers there aren't worth the money that we're paying them, because that kind of crime was able to be committed successfully right there in front of them, all of them, for 6 years. So either they're completely inadequate and incompetent as a cop to be able to detect something on that scale going on right there, or they did know about it and they were complicit through their silence and didn't exercise the same kind of law enforcement that they would on the street with one of their own. Now, neither answer is good, because both of them call into question the integrity and the legitimacy of my police department. And I don't like doing that. I want to have full faith and full trust and full confidence that whenever an officer is walking around on the beat, that I can trust him.
Back to the committee.
Okay, we have, thank you for those comments. We have Councilmember Torres.
Motion to approve the work plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion is a second on the work plan, so let's go ahead and vote. Okay, I think that's, is someone not voting? Did everybody vote? There you go. All right, very good. All right, we'll move on to item C, which is the consent calendar. We have no items on the consent calendar, but I'll go ahead and take public comment on consent calendar.
We have no hands.
Oh, sorry about that. I didn't hear that. Okay, wonderful. We'll move on to D1, which is Police Department Operations and Performance Bi-Monthly Status Report. We have our PowerPoint, and Lieutenant Hamlin will be presenting, I believe. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think our video is.
Yeah, I
Our
was
video is
trying
up.
to, if you want to give us a second, Lieutenant, let me just see, because we often follow the presentation on the screens, and
Yeah.
there seemed to be a problem with the screen. I'm not sure if there's anyone from IT or... Okay, if you, I would encourage, let's see if we can work through this, but if we can, maybe pull up the item on your iPad or on your computer so you can follow along. And I presume if someone's on Zoom, they can see the presentation, right, even though it just came on? Oh, perfect, it's on. Okay, please, take it away.
Thank you, and good afternoon. I'm Lieutenant Paul Hamblin of the Research and Development Unit of the San Jose Police Department. With me today is Captain Jason Dwyer of the Bureau of Investigations, and we will be presenting the department's operations and performance bi-monthly report. Today we will be covering citywide crime statistics, which will include a discussion on the effect of the new crime reporting system, NIBRS, on crime statistics. I'll provide a brief update on redistricting efforts. And finally, Captain Dwyer will provide a report on the effectiveness of GHOST, the Gun and High Risk Offender Suppression Team. We will begin with our citywide Part 1 UCR crime stats for April and May of 2023, the last 2 months for which we have complete data. As I show you the statistics, starting with April, I'll remind you that on April 4th, the department transitioned from the Summary Reporting System, SRS, to the National Incident-Based Reporting System, NIBRS. As I've told you at previous meetings, NIBRS allows for greater specificity in crime reporting, making it difficult and misleading to compare the numbers after April 4th with those prior to that date. The most obvious difference between the two reporting systems is that under the old system, SRS, only the most serious crime committed in a given incident was reported in the statistics. For example, if a robbery and a vandalism were reported in the same incident, only the robbery was reported. Under NIBRS, the new system, all relevant crimes are reported for each incident. The way this manifests itself in the numbers is that the numbers for the most serious crime types, such as homicide, rape, and robbery, are not likely to change much, since they were already being reported in SRS as the most serious crime of that incident. On the other hand, as you can see, a crime like aggravated assault, which often was trumped by the more serious crimes it typically accompanied, such as rape and robbery, would go up under the new system, as it too is now being reported in each incident. And we see the same thing in May. Again, the numbers for the top three did not dramatically change, but the numbers of aggravated assaults did. And now we'll move on to redistricting. We are well into phase 2, which began in June. Since June, we have provided the vendor matrix with an enormous amount of data regarding the department, its operation, and the city. From every corner of the city, and with the help of other city departments, we have provided data on a wide range of measurables, including call volume, response times, staffing, infrastructure, population density, and geography. The vendor has completed a series of interviews with all the chief officers and key program managers. This week, starting Tuesday in fact, the project manager for Matrix is spending each day doing a series of ride-alongs all over the city. He's literally hopping from patrol car to patrol car and district to district, learning the current beat structure and getting perspective of a wide range of field officers and sergeants. From speaking to the vendor on a weekly basis, I believe we are on pace to begin phase 3 on schedule in January of 2024. It is during phase 3 that the vendor will develop and recommend its strategic plan, and implementation will begin. Now I will turn the remainder of our time over to Captain Dwyer for the report on Ghost.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Captain Jason Dwyer. I'm currently assigned to the Bureau of Investigations 1, which oversees the Violent Crime Unit. Encompassed within the Violent Crime Unit is the Gun and Hazardous Offender Suppression Team, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that today. So, for starters, the San Francisco Bay Area has been identified by the United States Department of Justice as one of the five key market regions in the United States for illegally trafficked firearms. So amidst that backdrop, the department created the Ghost Unit on January 1st of 2023 at the direction of Chief Mata. The Ghost Unit chain of command. As I mentioned before, the Ghost Unit is assigned to the Bureau of Investigations Violent Crimes Unit. So as you see at the bottom there, the Ghost Unit is comprised of 1 sergeant, 2 investigators. They report to Lieutenant Gino Goulart, who is the Violent Crimes Unit commander. Gino reports to me, and I report to Deputy Chief Steve Ligorio. Our mission statement for the Ghost Unit. The Gun and Hazardous Offender Suppression Team's mission is to increase public safety in the city of San Jose through the suppression and interdiction of illegal firearms possession, trafficking, and manufacturing. And here is a summary of the unit objectives. First, to identify and apprehend what we call priority gun offenders. This is a term that we coined in collaboration with the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office Crime Strategies Unit, specifically Supervising Deputy DA Marissa McKeown. We define individuals as priority gun offenders when they are involved in illegal firearms possession, distribution, trafficking, as well as possession of illegal firearms accessories such as suppressors, silencers, and fully automatic switches or machine gun conversionary devices. Conduct intelligence gathering on firearm-related crimes through investigative methods, including human sources, social media, prior case knowledge, and follow-up investigation. Collaborate with other law enforcement agencies on major gun investigations, including the DA's Office Crime Strategies Unit, our federal partners in the ATF, as well as the FBI, as well as local law enforcement, other cities, both inside and outside Santa Clara County, and to serve as a resource for other units within the police department, namely the Bureau of Investigations and the Bureau of Field Operations. And as you'll see in this next slide, the Ghost unit, like many of our special operations units, maintains its own statistics internally, its own metrics. I'm responsible for reporting out on those metrics to Chief Mata and the other chiefs within the department on a quarterly basis. And below you'll see a summary of that activity to give you an idea of the operational tempo of the Ghost unit. So the date range here, as I mentioned before, is January 1st through August 31st, and that was simply in preparation for this meeting. It's not an entire year, but it gives you a pretty good idea of the good work that they're doing. So in total, the Ghost unit, remember, we're talking about 2 officers and 1 sergeant. So when you look at these numbers, think about that in terms of staffing and what they're able to accomplish with just 3 people. They touched 83 cases, which means they actively worked 83 cases involving priority gun offenders. 29 of those cases, or 35%, were assists for the Bureau of Investigations, where other investigative units within our Bureau requested their assistance. 39, or 47% of those cases, were Bureau Field Operations assists. Generally speaking, proactive law enforcement on vehicle stops, probation paroles, searches, and other calls for service that generated leads for the Ghost unit that they then took over that investigation and took it to the next level. They made 78 arrests in conjunction with BOI and BFO. 35 of those 78, or 45%, were prohibited persons, which were people basically prohibited in California from possessing a firearm. And the number of juvenile suspects was 18 out of the 78, which is 23%. Those 2 statistics for us are very alarming trends. Almost half the people that we're seizing firearms from are prohibited persons, and almost a quarter of them are juveniles. They authored 81 search warrants, which is astounding. Keep in mind, these search warrants are not all for vehicles or residences. Many of them are for digital devices to further their investigations. The Ghost unit was the lead on 8 major large-scale operations involving other units within the department as well as other agencies, and they assisted in recovering 78 firearms. 28 of the 78 firearms were investigations that were initiated by the Ghost unit. So moving forward, we are currently in talks with the federal ATF to establish a memorandum of understanding to partner with them for both information sharing and the use of some of their facilities for evidence processing. Working with the Santa Clara County DA's office as part of their initiative for a crime gun intelligence center model. That includes eventually working with their forthcoming county gun task force, information sharing, and finally working on streamlining the process of firearm and ballistic evidence. As Lieutenant Hamblin talked about earlier, we're using data to basically put into these databases. The entry for those is Integrated Ballistics Identification System, or IBIS. This captures information that's similar to a fingerprint, only it's not a hand or a finger that's leaving the print on the evidence as far as a weapon or a shell casing. It's the firearm itself that leaves the fingerprint. So the tool that allows us to input that data into these databases is called brass tracks. Once the data is seized, it then goes into a national database called NIBIN, which stands for National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. This allows for the comparison of ballistic evidence to aid in solving and preventing violent crimes involving firearms. So our department has currently placed a brass tracks device, which you can see on the screen there. It's pretty small, but very expensive. The cost is roughly $170,000. Currently in Northern California, the cities of San Francisco, Oakland, and Stockton have that technology in-house. Our idea is to continue our front-end approach to fast-tracking the evidence processing so that we can process that evidence ourselves instead of sending it to the county crime lab, which is already overburdened. And we find ourselves oftentimes trying to fast-track or put a priority on certain types of cases. And lastly, I'll just leave you with this photo is just a couple recent cases that the Ghost unit worked. As you can see within this photograph, multiple assault weapons, suppressors, scoped rifles, handguns, ghost guns, narcotics, and ammunition, and high-capacity magazines. So this is the type of thing that these detectives are responsible for taking off the streets on a regular basis. And that concludes my presentation, if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Captain and Sergeant, for the presentation. We're going to go to see if we have any public comment before we come back to the committee.
We have no hands raised.
Okay, no hand raised. We'll bring it back to the,
We just had one hand go up for Paul Soto.
go ahead if you want to call.
Paul Soto.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain Dwyer, for that report on the ghost guns. I want to talk about the redistricting update and item number, or phase 2 of that slide. I was asking that the consultant that's going to come in and assist the department on finding ways and means, and that really that person is doing the job of the public. And so what I wanted, and what I've already requested this, is that I want to talk to that person. I want some kind of community, and I don't mean reps either. I don't mean representatives of all these nonprofits that basically feed at the teat of the city and the county. So because these systems get kind of compromised and diluted in terms of the real issues, because they have political agendas, and they're coming into the conversation with those.
Back to the committee.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and go to Councilmember Torres first.
Great. Thank you, Captain and Lieutenant, for the presentation. I had 3 questions, but in the presentation, you answered one of them, so you could take that one off the table. So the biggest question that I have is there going to be, and I know that, Paul mentioned it, I don't agree with Paul on a lot of things, but community engagement is extremely important. And so whether it's nonprofits or neighborhood association or other community-based organizations, are we going to have community engagement when it comes to police redistricting?
I don't think that's been, thank you for your question, council member. I don't think that's been decided yet. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to go through the phase that we're currently in. We've already handed over all the data and all the information. The vendor is going to make some determinations, and then I think it will be between us and the vendor to make that determination as to some kind of public outreach and how far-reaching that would be.
Okay, great. And I ask for a reason. So right now all of us go to neighborhood association meetings or business association meetings, and actually some of us actually have 3, our council districts are so big that we have 3 police districts in our council district. I don't know about my other colleagues, but I have Central, I have Foothill, and I have Western, right? And so the area, as we know, is mostly Central San Jose. And so, I think it's very important, one, because our business associations and our neighborhood associations, right, continue to hear not only from us, but from our police department that we are stretched too thin, right? On a Friday evening in the city of San Jose, I'm just pointing out to Central, and by the way, our captain in Central is amazing. We have, our neighborhood associations and our business districts get frightened when they only hear that there is only 4 beat officers for Central, which goes from the 280 all the way down to Alviso, all the way up to North San Jose, to the boundaries of a suburb called the city of Santa Clara, I think, right? But they get frightened, right? And I know that as a city, we're working together to hire more police recruits, and I'll have questions when it comes to the recruitment and hiring portion of the meeting. But I'm just putting it out there that our neighbor association, our business associations are really frightened that, they only have 4 beat officers for like a Friday evening or a Thursday evening. And so I think it's really important, one, to get community engagement, but also that we continue to work together to make sure that, our police officers have the resources to be out there and gain the trust of our community, so.
May I make a comment on that,
Yeah,
council
absolutely.
member? I started with the department in 1999, and we have the exact same beat structure today that we did in 1999. And obviously the city has changed enormously since then. So this is why I think this project is so important, is exactly what you just said.
Great. And I just realized that my other question was actually answered in the presentation as well, so I only have one question, but it was the police redistricting, and with that, I motion to support D1, item D1.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. I have Councilmember Arjun Badra next to speak.
Thank you very much for that report. And I got a couple of questions. One, because of the change in system of how we classify, or previously what was considered a one report now could be 2 or 3, more likely 2. The assault ones seem to be combined with everything else. Did we also change anything because of that? The numbers are now higher in the assault category. Are we doing anything special to see that how we manage that, or this was just an expected thing and hence we moved forward?
I'd actually like to call down Janet Pham, who's the supervisor in the crime analysis unit, to come down and answer that question. And perhaps if you could ask it again for when she comes down, I'd appreciate that, council member.
Oh, yeah, do you want me to repeat the question?
Please, thank you.
Okay. The crime statistics reported, especially the portions for assault, that number went up quite a large as expected with the change of the system. Did we find anything else beside the impact of the change of the system, or is there something else which is also contributing to this increase in number, and any adjustment we had to make to accommodate that?
Sure, council member. There have been changes to the California Penal Code as well, and these have an effect on our assault numbers. We are actually still working through all of these changes because the California Penal Code changes maybe every 6 months. So then the police department actually has to evolve along with these changes and then be able to explain the changes in statistics along with that.
Okay, so in terms of the handling of the cases, nothing new had to be done other than whatever required changes are. Okay, all right. All right. Thank you very much for that. I do have a second question, which is relating to the ghost, and the distinction that we are part of the 5 cities identified as the most required or the most trafficked cities. Not the distinction we want, but we got that. Did it come with any special money to take care of this thing as well, or we just got identified as the 5ers to take care of this problem?
Thank you, Councilmember, for that question. We're always looking for money. So the short answer is...
You need it, we need it, so...
With regard to the brass tracks device that I mentioned, the department's going to explore different funding sources, perhaps grant funding. We're always in talks with the DA's office, looking for any type of grant that might fit that piece of equipment. The federal government has made it clear that obviously that is a priority, is gun violence across the country. That's not unique to this region, even though this region is one of the most active. But we're always looking for funding. I think that the fact that we upstaffed, the Ghost unit started with 1 sergeant as a liaison to the Crime Strategies unit, and the chiefs felt strongly enough about the way that this was trending nationally that they upstaffed it by 2 detectives and created a formal unit with its own budget. Within that budget, part of what we are, again, as I mentioned earlier, working on is a memorandum of agreement with the ATF. I can't specify, the specifics of it because I don't have it in front of me right now, but there are times that such agreements can produce benefits to the department, such as overtime, vehicles, additional personnel for major operations that don't impact San Jose Police Department. There'll be federal partners that were coming in to help us, as well as the use of some of their equipment that can help process that evidence quicker. So it's a fairly young, I would say the unit is in its infancy, but just the creation of the unit itself shows the department's commitment to driving down gun violence that on a broader scale in San Jose, not just the one-off. There's a suspect with a firearm, we take that person into custody, we book the gun, and then we're off to the next one. This unit specifically is trying to impact, not just possession, but distribution and manufacturing. We've come across several cases where we've had, I would say, localized little gun production in somebody's house or their garage, perhaps. They're creating ghost guns. They're building ghost guns. They've got 3D printers, things of that sort. And so to be able to shut something like that down, you're impacting perhaps an entire region of the city, because that person's probably been building those guns and distributing them on the black market for some time. So it's not just the one-off, and we're working with the DA's office to make one case. We're trying to get as many of those guns illegally possessed and the illegal accessories. And again, as I mentioned before, and I'll close with this, almost half of the people that Ghost is coming into contact with are not even supposed to possess firearms in California because they've already been forbidden, generally speaking, because they are felons. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. The last question is about, you got the 5 cities, so 4 others, you share the data across, see their trends and what are they finding, and obviously the people who are involved may be involved in more than one city in this kind of an activity, so there's a sharing of data about that with the other 4 cities which are listed on this thing.
Thank you, Councilmember. I would offer that we do collaborate with the other major cities in the region on a more localized level. The DA's office, again, I mentioned supervising Deputy DA Marissa McKeown is the lead of the Crime Strategies Unit. She has created a program called GRIP. Basically, it's a information sharing between all the different law enforcement agencies and federal partners in Santa Clara County. And the GRIP meeting is a monthly meeting that has a very large attendance. It's held at the DA's office, and it's been a very successful one to this point. So I would offer that when the opportunity is there for us to collaborate with other large cities on specific cases, we absolutely do that, but on a more local level within Santa Clara County, that's the GRIP component to the Crime Strategies Unit is a built-in information sharing within Santa Clara County. We are a large part of that.
Thank you for the report, and thank you for making our city and residents safe in every possible way you can. And thanks for all your work.
Thank you, Councilmember. We have Councilmember Bien Duan with some comments.
Thank you for the report. Thank you, Chair. On the redistricting, I would believe that the San Jose Police Department used dynamic deployment, including statistic to include geographical and crime data to increase your effectiveness to control the city of crime, if you will. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We went back to different degrees. We went back 3 years, and then I think we went back as many as 10 years on our crime statistics with different filters, obviously, but to really be able to pinpoint where we need the officers the most, and also to pinpoint and identify the best structure. Is the beat structure the best structure to get officers in the areas they need to be the fastest? And that's definitely one of the things we're looking at.
Thank you. And then I believe summertime's always the uptick of crime throughout the whole nation, for that matter. So towards summer, I would imagine the police department have a very clear plans of better enforcement throughout the city towards the summertime.
Thank you for your question, council member. I don't know that we've ever really explored a seasonal model, if that's what you're referring to, but I think that may be one of the things that comes up. I mean, we know that crimes are cyclical. Certain crimes are heavier in the summer and lighter in the summer. We've talked about in this very committee, we've talked about vehicle crimes, how the hot spots on the calendar are in the summer when the kids are out of school, and in the winter when people are doing warm-ups, so that sort of thing. Yes, crime does generally tend to go up in the summer, and we have 2 shifts. We call them shifts. It's basically when an officer is able to bid a different team and go to a different division, and those coincide with the spring and the fall. And so as far as changing the structure or changing the operational plan based on the season of the year, I'm not sure we've really looked into that, but it's definitely something that I can bring up.
Please do. And has the automatic license plate reader has helped your department to capture a lot of these crime?
Yes, most definitely, and I think Captain Dwyer probably has a bit better picture of the types of crimes that we've been able to solve with that, but absolutely, I know that almost on a regular basis we're hearing about crimes that are being solved through that. Captain?
I can tell you, this doesn't pertain to ghosts, but just a couple nights ago we had a very serious sexual assault that was committed in our city. And I'll make a long story short, a canvas for witnesses and video showed us the suspect's vehicle, gave us 2 to 3 digits of the license plate, couldn't get the entire plate. But one of the detectives up in the bureau went to our flock system and was able to find that car on a nearby flock camera, and it gave us the license plate. We then started doing records checks on the license plate. Eventually, that information led us to our primary suspect, and he gave incriminating statements, and he was booked that night. And the charges he was booked for, it was a life case. So he was identified within an hour based on those cameras. I mean, it's fantastic, and probably once every day or every other day, at least one very serious crime is solved through the use of those cameras. They are a force multiplier, particularly for an agency that is experiencing staffing challenges the way we are.
With the AB 645, I believe, with the speed camera, and I know that criminal, when they want to escape the city after committing a crime, they'll speed through many different areas. Will your department coordinate that to be able to use that speed camera to possibly help solve criminal cases?
My understanding is that we will. Yeah, I've spoken to representatives from jurisdictions where they're currently using it, and they are able to, yes.
And the last question I have is regarding Ghost. Do you happen to know the DA department when they're violating not only a felon, but they're violating the city, county, state, including federal laws? Am I correct? When they're manufacturing Ghost?
Yes, and thank you for that question, Councilmember. I would offer that we have a good relationship with the ATF right now. Matter of fact, I was in a meeting with them along with our Ghost personnel about 2 weeks ago at the police department. Generally speaking, we'll look at those cases, and wherever the case drives us, we'll kind of dictate whether it gets charged at the state level and the DA's office is part of that conversation, or at the federal level. A lot of times, if it's going to grow beyond our bandwidth, and the ATF is able to assist us with a larger scale investigation, it could go federal, or if the penalties were stiffer, it could go federal. There's a number of factors that play into whether or not we charge it at the state level, which is done by our district attorney's office or at the federal level. But it is an option on every single one of these cases.
Oh, thank you, and keep up the good work out there.
Thank you so much. I just have a few questions. Captain Dwyer or Sergeant Hamlin, I'm curious, you know, obviously one of the responsibilities of the city is to protect its residents. Public safety is super important. And I know that there's often debate as to whether we're a safe city, safer city than last year, than 5 years ago, whatever it may be. So the question I have is, what is it that I can look at, or the residents can look at, to determine whether we're a safer city now than we were a year ago, let's just say? Because I don't know, I've had trouble finding the exact sort of formula to say, you know, this number's down, hence we're a safer city than we were last year. So just your thoughts on that. And I know it might be a complicated answer, there's a lot of moving parts as it relates to the type of crime and things of that nature. But
Thank you for your question, Chairman. Are you asking if we are becoming a safer city when you look at our numbers? Are we progressing, or are you wanting to compare us to other cities?
yeah, I mean, so for example, what comes to mind is many years ago, even before I was on council, I know oftentimes we would lift ourselves up as being one of the safest cities in the country, as an example. So like when we make those type of determinations and conclusions, what are the stats that we're looking at to determine whether we are in fact the safest city in California and the county, and how do we?
Thank you for that question, Chairman. I believe that it's a very subjective determination, and I remember when we used to say that about ourselves, and I think it was because there was a publication, and I can't remember which one it was, that would put out every year, it would put out a list of its top safest cities, but it's based on a pretty subjective set of criteria. You know, you could probably make an argument for a lot of different cities depending on what criteria you use. And we don't generally, that I know of, compare ourselves to other cities. It wasn't us that was making that claim. We like having it said about us, for sure. We would still like it. But we weren't saying that about ourselves. We weren't telling people we were the safest city, because it is pretty subjective. Yeah. We definitely have the crimes that I show you every bi-monthly report. Those are the kind of our bread and butter. Those are our Part 1 crimes, and perhaps Janet can speak to this as well, but those are our Part 1 crimes, and those are the ones that we really hang our hat on, how we're doing. As in who we compare ourselves is to ourselves. We compare ourselves to, are we getting better? Are crimes going down, but also are we solving the crimes? And I can tell you that over the last few years, our homicide solve rate is hovering right around 100%. And so that's really, in our mind, yeah, we are one of the safest cities in America, because not only are we improving in those particular areas and those serious crimes, but we're solving our crimes, and we're bringing justice to the victims, and we're also giving other criminals something to think about because of all of the crimes that we're solving and the criminals that we're arresting.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and it's something I often hear in my community. The last 7 years or so, I've been a council member. You hear some residents, particularly part of this, you know, the area I represent, well, crime's out of control. And I'm, well, what exactly are we looking at? And sometimes I don't always know like what statistic to share with them, because I feel like no matter what I share with them, the feeling they have is the feeling they have. And I think, I remember having a conversation with Chief Garcia back in the day when Nextdoor initially got launched. And the thought was that sort of made it feel like things were just simply out of control, that there's someone on each block walking around with a machete, just ridiculous stuff like that, right? Because it would make it seem like things were drastically sort of falling apart in the city. And certainly we have issues as a city. But anyway, that's the reason I ask, because I'm always curious as to what is it that I cite, right? And what's accurate. But I guess it just depends on what we're looking at and how we're doing that. So thank you for that. The other question I had was regarding the redistricting. Do we, and I think I might have asked this question before, but I'll ask it again just to highlight the importance for me, and I believe the city, is the substation, obviously in South San Jose. How does that play into it, or even the new training facility that's being built in District 2 in South San Jose? How does that play into the analysis as it relates to the new deployment model, if one is going to exist, or the redistricting generally?
Thank you for that question. It plays very heavily into it. The whole idea behind the substation was to make it a substation. And as I think we might have discussed at an earlier meeting, it's being used as anything but that right now. And by substation, what we mean is that we would deploy directly out of there. It is in the southern division, of course. And so it's conceivably, and it hasn't been decided yet, but conceivably at least the Southern Division would deploy from that substation and possibly parts of other divisions. And honestly, if you're talking about a couple years down the road, we don't even know what that's going to look like. We don't even know if we're going to have divisions. But unquestionably, the substation is going to play a big part of it. And where the training facility plays in is that once that training facility is operational, we can move, I would just be guessing, but I would say the vast majority of what the substation is currently being used for out of that building into the training center, and then we can use the sub-center for what it is meant to be used for, and which is to be another station. We are the most centralized large city in the country. I don't think there's any question about that, because we operate almost entirely out of 201 West Mission Street. So being able to do that is a huge part of it. Being able to basically split the department and be more centralized to a different part of the city.
Okay, and then if I'm looking at the phases, right, 1, 2, 3, phase 1 through 5, or whatever the number is, at what point in those phases would that decision be made as to how we're going to utilize a substation? Assuming you know. I know it's.
I believe it's going to be in phase 3. I think that decision, I think most of those major decisions should be made by at least by the end of phase 3, because the idea is we're going to begin implementing them, and it's not going to be full implementation all at once. It's going to be carried out over a period of time.
Right.
But I do believe that those key decisions are going to be made during phase 3.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, but thank you for the confirmation. The other question I had was related to community input. I know you have the consultant that's doing ride-alongs, doing all this great stuff, which is important. I appreciated the question from Councilmember Torres. I know sometimes the RFPs and the scope of work related to a consultant constrains us from actually doing certain things. Do you know if the scope of work with that particular vendor consultant allows for the integration of public participation?
I do not know.
I'm happy to take that. The contract with the vendor does not prohibit any community engagement. And just to speak to, there was community engagement up front before we started the redistricting process, very formally around that process, but then very informally, as Councilmember Torres said, around working with a number of you at different neighborhood associations. This report is to look at how we deploy and the efficiency of the department for those calls. And I think once we have a model in place through phase 3, what we might think it looks like, that may require different policy considerations for the council to consider, or resource considerations for the council to consider. So those would go through some type of community input. I would say separate, but in parallel to this process, as part of one of the RIPS recommendations, there's a handful of them that really deal with community engagement, and we're bringing on resources to help with that. So I think at some point, some of this will line up, or we'll have that opportunity to have both of those conversations.
Okay, all right. On this particular. So I have a few more questions, but I'll go to Vice Mayor Kamei. I think she has a comment on this topic, on this particular question.
Thank you so much, Chair. I think that one of the things that I've heard and is a concern is that, you go through a process and then you get to the end of the process and then you kind of have not had the opportunity to hear the community. So I think that as we're moving forward, it would be great for you to identify for us what are the points in which community input would be taken. Because I think that, it's nice that we have a consultant on board and everything, but in the absence of community input, it's happening in isolation as far as I'm concerned. So I think that I'd ask you to consider when would be appropriate, right? And identify at this point in time, at this point in time. And I think that it would also help the community understand what's coming. And for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just go on a few other quick questions. Just, I was surprised to see, I think it's on, I forget what slide it was, but the one where San Francisco Bay Area has been identified by the United States DOJ as one of the 5 key market regions of the U.S. for illegal traffic firearms. The question I had about that is, one, I was surprised to see that, but two, is that firearms being trafficked into the state or from the state outward? I'm trying to, or that's just generally sort of, I'm trying to understand what that means exactly.
I don't have the data in front of me. I would venture a guess that it's a mixture of both.
Okay.
But our biggest concern, if we find out people are trafficking firearms out of San Jose, it's still a concern because the public safety, yes, we're here to serve the community of San Jose, but we're not okay with firearms being illegally shipped or distributed to other cities or kicking the can down the road. But our primary, focus right now is people that are engaging in straw purchases, people that are manufacturing parts and entire firearms, bringing them onto our streets. And that's being done both elsewhere and being trafficked here, and it's also being done here where they're manufactured here and being trafficked a very short distance within the same city and being deployed, so to speak, by criminals on the street.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so even if they're going out, I mean, just to your point, which makes sense to me, if they're being manufactured in San Jose and sent out, say, ghost guns, I mean, that's obviously a problem, right? I mean, so.
Yes, but one thing I'll add to that is, we're getting a lot of firearms seized that have been modified with, you can take a handgun and they're putting devices on these handguns where, one pull of the trigger, you fire the entire 30-round magazine in about 3 seconds. I mean, they're fully automatic. So even importing the devices themselves, and maybe not firearms, but just parts for firearms, could change the entire, footprint of, illegally possessed firearms in the city of San Jose. So we're not just focusing on the guns. If we find out somebody's bringing in suppressors or conversionary devices, things that will make firearms fully automatic, then obviously the ghost is going to take those cases on.
Okay, all right. It seems to me the larger issue is just simply the proliferation of guns, the spread of guns in our society, right? Is one of the big concerns I have is having kids who are still in school and on, right? We hear about it every day. I know there's a lot of federal sort of impediments, laws, the Supreme Court, other sort of entities that prevent us from, I think, doing a lot of work around the topic of guns. But I wonder if it's just an open question, if we've engaged the IGR team on any related policy work around the proliferation of guns, maybe within the state of California, because we're sort of an island sometimes as it relates to some of these policies. But I don't know, Lee, if you have any thoughts on that.
Sure. IGR did help with the gun insurance program quite a bit because that needed work at a state level. And so I think where we do engage legislatively, it is at a state level. I think those changes are often around the edges, however. We haven't really engaged on a federal level. We try and focus where we can make meaningful progress. And Congress has not wanted to make meaningful progress on this topic, so we have not engaged directly on it now.
Yeah. Okay, all right. The very last question I have is related to the ballistic sort of evidence sort of evaluation machine, I'll call it, the IBIS. I was trying to remember what you said, Captain Dwyer. Do we have it, or we want to purchase it?
We have placed it on our wish list.
Oh, okay.
So it is, it's there ready to be purchased once we can dig through the couch cushions and find the money somewhere. Okay. But I will say that in my conversations with both the DA's office and the ATF, in a nutshell, what that enables us to do. Other cities, let's just say a quick case study would be like a city like Cincinnati. Our DA's office recently went there for a crime gun intelligence center kind of symposium. And the short of it is they're literally collecting casings at the scene, driving them directly to the police department, putting them in this machine. The machine is getting a digital print fingerprint, if you will, of that casing, inputting it into NIBIN, then it's being examined by a trained examiner, and it's being linked, while the suspect is still being interviewed, it's being linked to other shootings. That's pretty astounding. So that's our pie in the sky, is to be able to do that here in San Jose, to have that quick a turnaround, because right now, a casing, it could be a couple weeks before we turn that around and are able to link it, and by that point, we don't know how stale the information is.
Okay. The reason I was asking is, I know that the county, the DA has the crime lab that you all send stuff to, right? I know there's a backlog, it seems, based on stuff. If we were to do this in-house, would it impact the perceived objectivity of the test when you go to trial to put some of these folks in prison or jail? Have you noticed or read up on any of that?
That's a great question, and it goes to any other specialized thing that we do in our department, which is training. You know, whoever uses that machine has to be certified. There is a certification process. The specifications on the machine itself drill down into what kind of facility it can be in. So anybody who would enter that type of data into NIBIN has to have been trained to use that type of brass tracks machine, and then be able to testify to it in court, similar to one of our latent fingerprint examiners, similar to somebody who would testify to being able to, observe objective symptoms of somebody under the influence of narcotics. So it's just a matter of training and certification.
Okay, all right.
But we could do it in-house. The short answer is yes, we could do it in-house.
All right, okay, good. What's the cost of the machine? I don't know if I missed that, maybe.
Roughly, off the top of my head, it's a little bit less, but around $170,000.
Okay. You guys don't have that money under a cushion somewhere?
As I said, the memo is fairly fresh after our talks with the ATF recently, but I think that we're confident that where there's a will, there's a way. So just putting it out there, food for thought. If San Jose Police Department had the capability to turn ballistic evidence around that quickly, it would be huge. And let me plant this seed as well. These other cities, when they're seizing firearms, their standard procedure is to take that firearm down to the range, fire it, collect that casing, and put it into brass tracks. So even if it's not a shooting, if it's just a straight possession of a firearm by a prohibited person, we're gonna find out what else that gun's been doing, and that's really where you're gonna compound the positive effects of spending that money.
Well, if you don't find the money before next budget cycle, I assume that we can easily, I suspect $100,000 something isn't insurmountable. But anyway, just planting that seed for my colleagues that are on the Public Safety Committee. Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions. Appreciate the report. Thank you. So we're gonna, so I think we're done. A motion and a second. Did we already have a motion? So there's a motion and a second. Go ahead and vote. Apologize. That's where you're looking at me with a blank stare like, what am I doing? Go ahead. Yeah, let's go ahead and vote. All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to item D2, response to report, San Jose Police Department data analysis and gender action plan by the Social Justice and Innovation Research Lab, SQ School of Public Administration and Policy, Florida State University. I know we have, I don't know if Assistant Chief Paul Joseph is going to be here. I don't see him, but Zulma's here from Director of Racial Equity, and of course, Lieutenant Hamlin. Take it away.
Good afternoon. Zulma Maciel, San Jose's Office of Racial Equity Director. I am here with my colleague, Lieutenant Paul Hamlin, to introduce this item. A little bit of background, and that's primarily the purpose for me being here today, is that I wanted to provide some context before going into the presentation about what this gender equity analysis is about. But approving today's report will close out a budget referral from 2019, where the City Council approved the allocation of $50,000 to go towards the gender equity analysis. The equity analysis was outlined as a direction from the city-approved Women's Bill of Rights ordinance, which was also approved in 2017. And at that time, and in the ordinance, you will find that the Human Services Commission was directed to oversee the implementation of the Women's Bill of Rights, and therefore, with the help of the City Manager's Office, administered a procurement process to identify a consultant that would conduct the analysis. So the Commission selected not only the consultant, which was out of Florida State University, but also selected the San Jose Police Department to participate in a gender equity analysis. So the memorandum before you delineates some of the recommendations from the report, as well as the progress that the police department has made towards those recommendations. So I will now pass it on to Lieutenant Paul Hamlin.
Thank you. I'm just going to highlight 5 recommendations and the department's response to each. Recommendation number 1, begin digitizing all records. The department agrees with this recommendation. Currently, most personnel records are digitally stored and searchable. For example, PeopleSoft contains personal demographics, including residency information, classification, time and classification, years of service, and salary. LEFTA is a program that monitors the entire field training program and tracks the training, performance, and evaluation of every recruit from academy graduation to coming off probation. IA-Pro tracks allegations of misconduct and disciplinary actions, and the department is in the process of implementing blue teams for all misconduct and vehicle collisions investigations. E-Resource governs the day-to-day availability and deployment of officers. The department is currently working with the Office of Employee Relations to automate annual performance appraisals. And finally, the department received funding in the 2023-24 operating budget to implement a software solution that will close the remaining gaps in digitized records. Recommendation number 2, optimize digital records availability to the public. The department agrees with this recommendation and recently contracted with Granicus to build a public-facing portal. The site, which will be called Engage SJPD, is in the process of being built. Once the site is up and running, the department will display information about the demographics of the department's membership, along with other information about the department. Recommendation number 5. Primary trainers and educators should come from within the department when possible. This recommendation is completed. Currently, 52 of 63, or 83%, of police academy instructors are department members. Every instructor for the required California Post Continuous Professional Training is a department member. When there are special needs classes, such as educating all command staff in the incident command system, the department sends a member of the training division to a train the trainer course, and the instruction is performed in-house. Additionally, department members are encouraged to seek outside training opportunities, such as interview and interrogation, investigations, tactics, and best practices. In so doing, department members receive outside perspectives and practices that are brought back to improve departmental operations. Recommendation number 12, increase resident engagement. The department agrees with this recommendation. The department currently operates the Team Together Empowering and Mentoring Kids program for middle school children. Additional school-based partnership programs are in place through the School Liaison Unit. And just last week, the department held its 2nd annual STAR, Strength, Truth, Achievement, Respect Camp. More than 40 members of the department and 40 students of Washington Elementary spent 3 days together at Camp Chesbrough. The department members, including several command officers, cooked for the children, planned activities, counseled with them, and generally just had a really good time. Additionally, the department is in the process of developing a comprehensive community outreach plan, which is expected to be complete in January of 2024. Recommendation number 11, increase recruitment and selection efforts of women to sworn officer positions to strive for gender parity among sworn officers. This recommendation is similar to recommendation number 10, which calls for increased recruitment and selection efforts of men in civilian positions. The department is unable to agree with either of these recommendations pursuant to Article 1, Section 31 of the California Constitution, which states, "The city cannot discriminate against or grant preferential treatment to any individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of public employment." However, the department is committed to implementing an inclusive recruiting strategy that welcomes applicants of all genders through diverse outreach and advertising. To that end, in the past few years, the department has held multiple recruiting events which were staffed almost entirely by female members of the department. During these events, female officers and other female department members interacted with members of the community and discussed employment opportunities for women in the San Jose Police Department. The department is committed to continuing these efforts to recruit a diverse workforce. And that is the end of that presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the report. We'll now go to public comments.
We have no hands. Back to the committee.
There's no public comments. All right, we're going to go to our city council member. I believe Council Member Torres up first.
Great, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Hey, there's a process in place and it works. So just a quick question. One, speaking of police districts, I grew up in the Washington neighborhood. And you just talked about it. You know, my very first time ever dealing with our police department was, you know, my father being pulled over because it's a training district. And that's the question that I forgot to ask, but I could always ask it offline. And so this is again, you know, I'm agreeing with Paul Soto today. But this is how we are rebuilding trust within our community, right? You just mentioned Washington neighborhood, and the first time that our youth or our community should be seeing a police officer, right, is not getting pulled over with their parents, right? It should be at their school, in the community, getting to know how amazing our police force is, right? Because unfortunately, there's a perception that's been happening, right, past few years, right? And we all know about it, right? So I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm not gonna, you know, continue to beat a dead horse. But this is how we build community trust, right? And so that's extremely important. What's also important is rebuilding community trust is also hiring folks that look like our community, right? And so I think it is very, very important that we are trying our best to hire women, right? Especially women of color to our police force. And I see it every single day, right? Not only at the police officers here protecting us during our city council meetings, but out in the community for neighborhood association meetings and business association meetings. So thank you to our police department on making sure that we are diversifying our police force. I did have a question. The recommendation number 5. I know that it is really important that you know, our instructors are within the department, but when it comes to immigration or LGBTQ or other gender issues, I wholeheartedly want to just let you all know that it is important that we get folks who are experts in that field, right? And I'm not saying that our police department is not experts in that field, but it is very important that we have instructors from, our various nonprofits or our programs or, CBOs who are doing this training. And by the way, before I became council member, I know that I sat on the LGBTQ panel that is it Chuck? Lieutenant Chuck, is his name Chuck? I forget his last name. Anyways, the lieutenant who ran that training, right, had it at Billy DeFrank Hill. There you go, Chuck Hill. Yes, yeah. He's gonna kill me for not remembering his name, but Lieutenant Chuck Hill ran. But he did have not only folks from the department, but other folks from our various nonprofits who dealt with LGBTQ issues. So I know that it's important, but we can't move away from having some experts who know what they're doing. So I know I had another one, and if it comes up, I will ask it. But other than that, motion to accept item D2.
Second.
Okay, wonderful motion and a second. We have Vice Mayor Kamei that wants to speak.
Thank you. Thank you for the report and responses to this. And I know it was mentioned that this is going to close out a previous request. I was just wondering if there are sort of ongoing review of the outcomes of these recommendations. Are they going to be continued on in terms of how do you measure them and move it forward?
Yes, we will continue to review them and work them out with Solma in her office, and continue to look at best practices and look at the progress we've made.
Mm-hmm. As I looked at the report, I know that this is the response to the report, but I have to say I wasn't really impressed with the report. I know that this was done at a previous time with previous selection process and what have you, but as we move forward, I would hope that we look at it a little bit differently. I know that I personally attended Women in Law Enforcement, and I know that we've come a long ways in terms of bringing women into law enforcement. I was really impressed with all of the opportunities that were out there. But I also feel that we're still at that, I think, 11% or 12%, somewhere around there in terms of those who are representative of the law enforcement community in San Jose. So we have a lot more to go. And, I would really recommend, and as part of the motion, I would ask to ask staff to take a look at initiatives like the 30% by 30, which really targets a way in which we can measure that we're moving towards a goal. And the 30% by 30 is at least something that's being done throughout the nation to try to get more women, not just, thinking of sworn officers, but involved in law enforcement. And I think that that's a good way to set a goal and be able to see if that's possible. So I would ask that that be looked into, if that's possible to add to the motion.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Does our seconder agree?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, so it would be to include this in the motion for the police department, or
To take a look at.
to explore that and see if it's.
Yeah, I would ask that the report, approve the police department's response to the report, and take a look at initiatives such as 30% by 30 as a possibility to help in gender equity.
Lee, I see that you want to say something.
I'm just trying to be helpful, Chair.
Please.
We can absolutely take a look at that and come back. I did want to just speak in a little bit more detail to recommendation 11, where we disagreed, and I think we had, where the report calls out increase the recruitment and selection efforts, and that's what the slide says. I think there's more specific language within the report. I did want to make sure that the committee knew that we're much more targeted and specific on the recruitment piece, not the selection, because there's a whole host of things there, although we do a lot of new things in the academy as well. But under the leadership of Deputy Chief Randall, they've been much more targeted on the recruitment side for women on a number of different fronts, which we're allowed to do. So I think maybe that got lost a little bit here. I think the part we disagree with is really the selection, but we're happy to look at the 30 by 30 initiative. And I know the Deputy Chief Randall is out today, but next time this comes forward, happy to have her here too and speak to some of the specifics, or have her follow up with you, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I actually was so impressed during the session that was held that I thought, you know, this is a really good thing that we ought to broadcast so that more people know about it. I think people just don't know. And to hear from those experienced individuals on the panel who balanced being in law enforcement as well as their family obligations was really great. I really think that there's a lot more there, and I think you know, a lot is being done, but I think that we need to kind of like let others know about it as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and that was accepted in the motion. So we'll go to Councilmember Batra, please.
Thank you for those recommendations, and agreeing with those recommendations. I'd just like to pick on the recommendation number 12, increase the resident engagement. You know, that now, from the time I came on board, I've been trying to make sure that our police force is seen as an active member of the resident, and they are not they and us, it's all of us together, because that kind builds the trust, cooperation, and increases our potential for being safe, because the neighbors know what we are looking at, the people who are coming in to watch for us know for that. So the more involvement of the police force in terms of what you've been doing, conducting those crime prevention courses or dialogues, having come into the community events when they are happening, the Viva Parks and other things as senior officer. So I appreciate that effort and your focus on it, because this is probably the easiest way for us to make our society safer and trusted. So, and I see that you have a target completion date of January 2024, but that's for the plan. The execution of it is going to be ever continuing and ever increasing, I would imagine.
Thank you for your question. Yes, that's just going to be putting it in place. That entails hiring a non-sworn community engagement consultant. It involves outreach to the community itself and involving them in creating the plan. Then, of course, once we do that, it'll hopefully continue on.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for that focus, because that is, as I said, is the easiest, least cost way to increase our safety and security.
Okay, wonderful. We have Councilmember Duan.
Well, thank you for the continued effort to hire more women into the police department. And I think it's a problem all the way around, including fire and police. In recent years, we have lost more position not filled by female firefighter or police officer, and I'm looking forward to see the number increase. Not only that, to represent the community and the ethnicity that we have here in the city of San Jose. So, what are the plan to reach out to recruitment in different ethnicity, if you will, in the city of San Jose?
And actually, the recruiting unit is here, and they're going to be speaking to that in depth. So I can just kind of give you a few little bullet points. I know that they're attending virtually every cultural event in the city, anything that's attended by people from other cultures, and they're being very visible out there. And we're putting uniformed officers there. We're also infiltrating different malls and shopping centers in different parts of the city where our demographics are reaching out to particular people.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you for that. I think, so we have a motion and a second. We can vote, please. And thank you all. I suspect, Sergeant Hamlin, you may hang around a little bit, but thank you, Zuma. Appreciate it. And that passes 4-1. I think Mr. Batra's in the back somewhere. If you can hear us, you can make his way forward. But we'll move on to item D3, which is Police Department Recruitment and Hiring Activity Annual Report. We have Police Lieutenant Mike Bowie. I don't know if, there he is. Assistant Police Chief Paul Joseph. I know I don't think he's, yeah. Okay, all right. And then Sergeant Hamlin.
Yes, and sorry, Assistant Chief Joseph was not able to attend. Captain Traer with Bureau of Administration is here.
Captain Traer, welcome. Thank you. Go ahead, whenever you're ready. Clerk, can we put Mr. Batra down as a yes on that other item? Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead, sir, whenever you guys are ready.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, community members, and members of the public. My name is Mike Bowie. I'm a lieutenant with the San Jose Police Department's recruiting unit, and with me is Captain Schreier with our Bureau of Administration. So on the screen, this is our sworn applications for the past 5 years. So in fiscal year 17-18, we had a high of 10,063, and then last fiscal year of 22-23, we have a 2,223. So versus last year, we have an increase about 16% from the fiscal year. It's roughly 299 more applications, and we hired 75 officers for the fiscal year of 22-23. These are some of the obstacles in the recruiting unit. We're seeing far fewer applications. Law enforcement agencies across the country is having similar recruiting issues, and part of this is because of the social and political climate and being portrayed, officers' occupation as being less desirable. Also, we're seeing competitions from other agencies. We recruit around the area, and before you would see 1 or 2 different agencies. Now you're seeing dozens of agencies in the same smaller applicant pool trying to get the same people we are. We're seeing retirement eligibility. A lot of officers around the nation, as soon as they're eligible for retirement, they are retiring and not staying longer. Especially around here, we have, the Silicon Valley, we have Tesla, Google, Apple, people exploring different opportunities. For our last academy, for the October academy, we hired 28 with a positive 32 starting in October. Focusing our recruiting efforts, we go to college and career fairs, community events, military bases, unaffiliated academies. We have an online presence and our text messaging application. I'll talk more about that later. So for colleges and universities, last fiscal year, we attended 48 presentations. We did 133 community events and job fairs. It's not limited to the Vietnamese Tet Festival, Vietnamese Moon Festival, the Sikh Gurdwara celebration, National Night Out, and the Assyrian Festival. We went to 12 military bases, and the South Bay Regional Academy, we went there 67 times. This is our target audience, those who are pursuing a career in law enforcement, personnel alignment with our core values, diversity, women, athletes, college students, and military personnel. Our advertising's recruited, our vendor is Civilian Inc., and they use a digital media versus a traditional media. Digital media is wider reaching, more cost effective, caters to a tech savvy audience, and we have the ability to have them flood geographical areas to help us recruit certain events. And they advertise for us on Facebook, Google, Indeed, and Twitter. And for in-house, we have our own SJPDU website. We also recruit on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We recently contracted with the San Jose Giants to have a billboard on their outfield. We have a digital billboard on 280. We have a commercial on the 49ers Cal High Sports Network, helping with the younger age high school kids. And we currently have a MOU on an general's desk with the Army PAYS program, which helps, the Army will help find jobs for transitioning soldiers who are leaving the military. And our interview now, that's our text-based application we use. We've noticed a lot of younger applicants, they don't like to read email. It's texting. So we have a recruiting officer literally texting all hours with the recruits or applicants and just answering any questions they have. And the company was so impressed with what this recruiter was doing, he actually came down and visited the police department to see all the different things that we're doing. So it's a very good tool for us. And this is just some of the posts that we have on our social media sites. And this is a picture of our Wednesday Night Fitness. So this was designed in April of 2020. And it was to help female applicants build strength to pass the physical agility and go into the academy. But we're all inclusive, so we welcome everybody. So this was a picture from a couple weeks ago. And yesterday we had our fitness series. We have it's every Wednesday night at the substation. 2 applicants came up to me. One said, I'm going to need to tell the other agency I'm applying for that I'm dropping out of the process. I'm staying with San Jose. Another applicant told me he went on a ride-along with another Bay Area agency, and because of the camaraderie they build, he senses the sense of family that we have. He's like, I'm staying with San Jose. I'm not going to apply with the other agency. So it's a really good event for us. And last fiscal year, we hosted 52 of these sessions. And this is the recruiting unit. We currently have 1 lieutenant, 1 sergeant, 2 officers, 1 office specialist, and 1 staff specialist, and a communications recruiter. So for diversity, we focus on schools within the Bay Area who have a high diverse population: San Jose State, CSU Bakersfield, Chico, Fresno, Monterey. And we conducted 48 presentations at colleges during the last fiscal year. And we also hosted a women in law enforcement event that was open to everybody. I know Vice Mayor Kamei attended, and we plan on doing that maybe 2 or 3 times a year. As soon as we posted it on our website and our civilian posted it, it sold out within a couple days. And unfortunately, I think you saw the numbers kind of were down because we had the shooting where the officer was shot a week before, or actually a couple days before our event, and I think that kind of dropped our numbers down. But we will host more of these events. This is our police academy. So current academy class is SJ47. They started with 27 recruits. We currently have 23, and the demographic makeup is 35% Asian, 4% Black or African American, 38% Hispanic or Latino, and 23% white. And here's a picture of SJ47. We have 11% females in this class. And of the 27 candidates, 10 were from San Jose. So in February of 2021, PISPIS committee asked the department to continue to provide stats on demographics. So according to the July 2022 census, the city of San Jose has 37% Asian, 31% Hispanic or Latino, 24% white, 3% Black or African American, and 5% other. And as May of 2023, our department had 1,076 personnel, and that's 13% female and 87% male. And the breakdown of ethnicities are Asians 13%, Black or African American is 3%, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander is 1%, Hispanic or Latino is 22%, white is 35%, American Indian or Alaskan Native is 1%, and 27 declined not to state. This graph represents our communications applications. So fiscal year 21 to 22, we had 614, and then last fiscal year we had 862. So that's a 40% increase in applications. For our recruiting efforts, we have a dedicated communications senior assigned to our unit to help with recruiting for communications. And then she also goes out with us with all the events and tries to hire for our communications and our data specialists. Any questions?
There are some. We're going to go to public comment first, see if there's anyone.
Zoom caller Blair B.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thank you for this item. We have a similar item to this on retention issues of recruitment coming up today. I just wanted to quickly comment. Thank you for the previous item. I wasn't there for it, but I would like to definitely review it. It seems hopeful thing. Good luck with that item. With the future of recruitment, you know, you are starting a really important recruitment drive around the time of the fentanyl issues with the SJPOA officer. That had to kind of be curtailed. To me, it made clear that you have to learn to recruit with the concepts of talking about reimagine and talking about health and human services, you know, real accountable practices to develop a whole community process. You have to learn to include that in your recruitment process in the future. Good luck in those efforts. We have to be sensitive to what we can be building for our future, and good luck in how you can do that. Thank you.
There are no more public comments. Back to the committee.
Okay, thank you. We have Councilmember Torres, please.
Great, thank you for that presentation. So obviously, you're all trying your best to diversify our police department, and thank you so much to Vice Mayor Kamei for the previous motion, and so there's room for improvements, right? And we're all working as a city to make sure that that we're improving and diversifying our police department. So I'm not gonna harp too much on the numbers, but it is, unfortunately, it is, concerning the demographics of our police department is still 13% women identified. So I think we need to get better at that, and I know that we are. And so our previous presentation proved that, right? And as well as I think that we need to make sure that as our Asian population continues to grow in our city of San Jose, that our department demographics also increases, right? And so 13% of our police force is Asian, and our overall population in the city of San Jose is 37%. And so we need to make sure that we continue to be either at these community events or ethnic media. I know that our Vietnamese and our Chinese community and our Indian community have their own local news organizations, because I see them at all the press conferences all the time. So it's very important. I have three questions. I think I'll leave the most controversial questions that I have last. But I think the first one is, has our retention rate gotten any better? I know that before I left the city, we had a retention rate with our police department. Has that gotten any better at all? Are we seeing police officers continue to serve? Because I know a lot of them were leaving to other jurisdictions, right? We were, quote unquote, the training ground, because our training was one of the best, as I was told when I worked here, one of the best in the nation. And so how is our retention rate?
Last fiscal year, we had 139 leave, whether it's retirement, resignation, or termination. And I believe that's a little higher than last year's. I don't remember what the numbers were for the previous.
Okay. So what is the average when folks who do not retire? Well, they could retire even, 5 years in, right? Okay. So how do I word that question? So what is the length of average service a police officer does for our city?
Normally it's 25, 27, but we are seeing younger officers leaving, not just for the law enforcement, other agencies, but just the career change altogether.
Okay. All right, and so I think we all as a city need to make sure that we continue to make sure that folks stay here, right? And so that's incredibly important, right? The other one, I think this is my last question, was because it was a little bit concerning, and I'm going back to my notes. I do see that we exceeded a lot of our overtime for the recruitment. I know only 370,000 was the explicit number, but we shelled over 800,000 of police officer overtime for recruitment. Is there a reason maybe a non-sworn or somebody from HR doesn't do it when we know that we're exceeding our budgeted amount?
A majority of the overtime overage was Oak Ridge Mall. That opened up in November of 2023. So we staffed it 3 days a week for 2 officers minimum. And that alone was almost 300,000 in overtime, which we didn't expect because we didn't know that mall was going to open up. That has since closed. But the recruiting unit only has 2 officers, and there's events everywhere. So we rely heavily on satellite recruiters that we have to pay overtime to attend events. And that's majority of the weekends. A lot of community events are weekends, so majority is satellite recruiters that we heavily depend on.
Okay. That I get, but my specific question was, and I don't know if Lee wants to chime in because you touched your microphone, but in this time of age where our neighborhood association and business association leaders want to see more police officers out in the street, I know how important recruitment is, right? Super important, but also folks want to see us out in our street, right? Protecting them from a crime, right? So is there a specific reason why we do not use somebody from maybe Jennifer's office or a retiree to recruit folks instead of folks who are on overtime?
Yeah, so I think the recruiting unit uses a mix of different strategies. I will speak to why Jennifer and her department don't do it. They assist quite a bit and are always in conversations with the recruitment unit on ways to streamline. I know we've been working on backgrounding and fingerprinting projects that are fairly complex with HR. I will say I think some of the overtime there was due to a vacancy within the recruitment unit, but it's also the priority that Jennifer has set for the police department and that the chief has kept on. And so we do have vacancies throughout the department. We backfilled those vacancies with the dollars saved through those vacancies and put overtime out on the street to deal with the public safety issue. But because this has been a priority, we've allotted overtime to the recruitment unit as well. And so as we continue to do that, we can definitely look at staffing models, but it's not that there's like an ongoing pot of money that we're not using to put recruitment. We're taking that ongoing savings from the vacancies and giving it to the recruiting unit because we're trying to decrease on those vacancies.
No, great. I think, yeah, I think we need to continue to one, make sure that we are getting the right folks, right, into our police department, right, and right folks that look like our community, right, speak like our community. And I know that's important, but, you know, it's in this day and age where, you know, our police officers and elected officials go out to neighborhood association meetings and business association meetings, and they're concerned about the, you know, the quote-unquote crime that is happening. And I know that our chair just mentioned it, right? There's always perception, right? I lived in the city of San Jose in the late 80s and late 90s where what was happening then, it doesn't even compare to what's happening now, right? And so we just gotta make sure that we are, you know, doing it right. And I know I showed Lee, but I think if we continue to do this right, we're gonna get more folks to be police officers. Because yes, I know, again, I don't want to harp on the political climate of being a police officer, but all of us working together to rebuild the trust of our community is super important. And hopefully one day we can get to those 10,000, you know, that's wow, the number is staggering, like 10,000 in 2017 to only 2,500 just last year is really concerning and staggering, but, you know, it's gonna take all of us to help out, so. And with that, I motion to support item D3.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have Vice Mayor Kamei.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all of the work that you're doing. I was so impressed with the Wednesday night fitness. I challenge my colleagues to go out there. I know that I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it, you know. But certainly it's very impressive that that you would create something to kind of like prepare those who may be interested for the physical fitness challenges. One of the things that sort of occurred to me in terms of what made me feel so excited about law enforcement and your whole program of women in law enforcement was their stories. How is it that each one of them were able to get a really good job, great benefits, and balance the challenges of working in law enforcement and their family? I think that's gold. Maybe it's platinum. I think you should have those stories front and center and let people know, how did they get there? What did they do? What has been their experience? How long have they been there? What departments they have gone through? Because it's so impressive that that alone will bring more interest in your recruitment process. So I was very, very impressed. If I were younger, I'd be there. But I really think that it's something that can be used. And, you know, I would encourage you to even, I mean, if they're willing to be recorded or talk about it or whatever, you know, your front page on recruitment should be, you know, the images of those who've had a wonderful sort of career ladder, because that's the other thing. It's not just one job. I didn't know there were so many opportunities along the way and options, you know. So I think that is a secret, and I think that secret should go out. So I would suggest, if you're able to and they're willing to tell their story, to use that, because I think that those who are considering, it's a really hard job, but it's a tremendously rewarding job. And I think that a lot of people are not sure, can I do this? Can I not do this? How is it? Very, very few other jobs have as many ladders, career ladders, that you have. And it was very clearly displayed at the session, but I think that people just don't know about it. And I think you should really, I mean, hopefully you can take that and work with that and, you know, sort of like push it out, social media, or to be able to push out on your website. I think it's very powerful when you hear people's stories. And I got excited, so I think other people may too. Thank you.
So Vice Mayor, our creative service unit has a few videos highlighting mothers in their apartment and what they went through, but I'll definitely, the panel, I know who you're talking about, I will reach out to them and see if they will help us make a video also.
Thank you for that. We're going to go to Councilmember Batra.
I've been looking through your report, which is very detailed in terms of who you're hiring, where you're hiring, and who you're losing. And I see that you're on this report that in 21-22, we had 139 people leave the police department. The biggest number was 58, the people who retired. Obviously, retirement is a reward, which people need to be able to exercise. But I see your projection for 23-24, 101 sworn officers are projected to be retiring. Okay? And assuming that number does retire, are we able to project that we are going to be able to fill that many vacancies created, leaving aside all the other reasons, you know, people resigning and going somewhere else? Just that number of retirees are the people who are likely to retire, 101 sworn officers. What's your feeling at the moment, and how are you anticipating what the city of San Jose is going to be looking like in sworn officers numbers?
So back when Captain Schreier got hired, we had academy classes of 60, 65, 70. So we're seeing those officers eligible to retire. So that's why we can project these big numbers, because they had big academy classes. But what I see is we're progressing forward. And for February of 2024, we have 71 applicants currently in the background process. So I'm hoping to have 45 to 50 for February. And we're just seeing a progression upward right now. So hopefully in June we'll have more on that. But I hope to fill those 101 vacancies.
Councilmember Batra, thank you for that question. I think he just called me old, for the record. But the reality is that number always is, every year is a very big number, like 101. That's the possible people who are eligible for retirement, right? So that number hopefully doesn't come to fruition to be that number. But I will agree with Lieutenant Bowie in that we are trending up. It's a great way to look at the numbers right now. And I have looked at numbers. I'm a data person. Every week I look at every single application, and they are definitely trending up right now.
So we'll be, it looks like two things. One, that 101 is not likely to get exercised. They're eligible for a retirement, but not everybody who's eligible exercises that right immediately. So that's a good thing. And the secondly, you're saying that our recruitment efforts, which you described before, they seem to be moving in a direction where we're going to be able to recruit and train enough to bring them into the field. So we most likely won't see this scenario actually happen. Okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, thank you. That's very comforting to know that the actions are going in a direction where San Jose will be fully equipped with this police force which we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Batra. We have Councilmember Duan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, staff. Thank you for the police department. Great work and on this report. I wonder, on the recruitment side, I know within the Asian community there's this big misnomer that police are bad. There's a lot of bribery and so on, and which is not true. I think the police department hasn't really done a great job on public advertisement and changing the public perception, if you will. And so there's a lot of Asian out there that want to become a police officer, but their parents tell them, no, that's not a good thing, because what happened over in other country, it doesn't happen here. So I think, I wonder, how do you go about to overcome that?
I was actually scared to tell my parents too. So I was going to San Jose State. I was doing engineering, what they wanted me to do. And I was really close to graduation, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. But I graduated though. I joined the police department, and I didn't tell them. They found out because the backgrounder called my house, and I was scared. But they could not have been more proud of me, and they're still really proud. And I love telling that story. I love going to San Jose State, my alma mater, and telling that story. Just because the perception of police officer back in your home country is this way, it's not like this anymore. And I'll tell you, I was scared to tell my parents. And it's just really different than what the parents know. So I love going to recruiting events and telling them the story.
And if I can add to that, the recruiting team is phenomenal at mentorship, which I didn't get when I got hired here, when they were still carving things in stone. But the mentorship now is real, where they are at times hand-holding people to go through the whole process of every race, every ethnicity. And I think that is important, because we have like the different, we have families come in and talk to us about, well, what are you going to put my kid through? How safe is this for my child? And the team, I think, does a phenomenal job at just educating the community at what a beautiful service job this really is, as you know, with your prior job, council member. And I can't give them enough kudos for what they're doing. Well,
Thank you. Captain Boy, I sympathize with you on that. I went through the similar thing. My parents wanted me to become a doctor because I was good in medical. And I decided to become a firefighter. And not a day go by that I don't think about it, and I never, ever regret it. And even if sitting right here, I still missing, being a firefighter. But beside that, the other question I have is, the police department has a pretty heavy washout rate. Why don't we just open it up to, instead of 45, open up to 55, because you're going to get washout at least 20%, I would imagine, on the average, right? So that way we can get more officer out there in the community, because the last academy graduation I went to was 13 out of 40, right, or something like that. But I'm hoping that we can, I think all of the city council and the mayor and our citizen agree on the fact that we need more police officer. And at the rate we're going, it's going to take us years to build the police department up to 1,500, and the ideal number is be above the 2,000. So what are your thought process on that?
I'll answer that in just a question. I want to go back to your previous question. So we actually just implemented a meeting, a Zoom meeting for applicants and their spouses and their families to ask us questions. Because we went to a recruiting event in USC down south, and some of the questions were like, well, my wife, she's kind of wondering, like, what's the process and all that, and they kind of clicked in the recruiter's head, like, we will do Zoom info sessions, answer any questions they have. So that's to answer that previous question. This question, it's not, the last class was 13, they started with 19. Our academies are slated for a maximum of 60. So we haven't reached that, and I don't even know when we had 60 last time, but it's not like we're capping it at a certain amount. We're just not getting qualified candidates to even reach that number.
Well, hopefully we can reach out a little harder, and I know that we're competing statewide or even nationwide to get people to become police officer. And that's just the public perception. And we need to change that. And thank you.
Okay, those are all the speakers. Thank you. We'll go ahead and take a vote. Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to item number 4, Workers' Compensation Program Annual Report. You have Jennifer Shembri and Eric Fortis. And I would say that we still have 3 items to go, so if anyone's interested in zipping through their presentations, or, feel free to do so, because it's presumed that we all read the information. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, committee members, members of the public. My name is Eric Fortes. I'm a division manager in Human Resources, and I'm here with Jennifer Shembri, Director of Human Resources and Director of OER. And we're here today to present to you our Workers' Comp Program Annual Report. Yeah, our recommendation is that the committee accept the annual report on the city's efforts to contain workers' compensation costs and reduce claims for the workers' compensation program by focusing on wellness, health, and safety through the end of fiscal year 22-23. This slide compares the total number of open claims through the end of the past 2 fiscal years. Through the end of June 30th, 2023, there was a total of 2,491 open claims, compared to 2,575 open claims through the end of June 30th, 2022. This accounted for an approximate 4% decrease year over year. This next slide reflects the total workers' compensation costs for fiscal year 22-23, which totaled $22,809,145. Fire and police costs combined was approximately $18.3 million, or 80% of the total workers' comp costs. The division came under the adopted budget of $23,507,500 by $698,355. This slide represents the general fund workers' compensation settlements in fiscal year 22-23 by department and costs. The majority of settlements and costs occurred in both fire and police. Fire had over $700,000 in settlements, while police had approximately $1.2 million in settlements. The total cost of all settlements was $2,428,073. Workers' comp settlements include compromise and release, or CNR settlements, and stipulations with requests for award, or STIP settlements. The importance of these types of settlements and the impact to the city's future liabilities is discussed in this next slide. Over the past 5 years, staff in partnership with the City Attorney's Office and InterCare have focused on CNR and STIP settlements to determine the impact of these settlements on the projected ultimate losses. Staff compared Aon's actuarial study from fiscal year 2018-19 to the current study of fiscal year 22-23. This slide reflects this comparison and the changes in projected ultimate losses from fiscal year 13-14 through fiscal year 22-23. The change showed a decrease of over $12 million, or a 3.8% reduction over the past 10 fiscal years. The reduction in projected ultimate losses, which are the total amount expected to be paid in a particular claim period after all claims are closed, supports the division's strategy and focus on settling and reducing future costs via CNR and STIP settlements. This next slide provides an overview of InterCare's staffing and the ratio of assigned claims to staff. As of June 30th, 2023, InterCare had 10 senior claims adjusters on our account, handling 1,363 claims for an average of 136.3 cases per examiner. They also had 4 future medical-only examiners, handling 1,128 claims for an average of 258 cases per examiner. InterCare is well within industry standards for the caseload of their examiners. This slide represents the performance measures for our TPA, third-party administrator, InterCare. On an annual basis, we evaluate InterCare's performance based on the following adjuster technical audit. There are two categories: quality performance and state compliance performance, in which each adjuster is evaluated. The overall audit score reflected no significant change over the prior fiscal year, 97.4% in 22-23 versus 97.5% in fiscal year 21-22. An audit score between 90 and 100% is considered and exceeds expectations and is the achievable passing score for InterCare. This slide identifies several of the division's workers' compensation programs. Claims reviews with the city's larger departments and InterCare continue on a monthly and quarterly basis and have proven to be an effective communication and collaboration forum to assist employees in return to work and move claims toward resolution. Quarterly workers' comp liaisons meetings have been ongoing, and the purpose of these meetings are to provide guidance on workers' comp best practices to our departmental workers' comp liaisons to ensure a positive employee experience and ensure employees receive timely benefits and medical care. The purpose of the Workers' Comp 101 supervisor training is to help supervisors and managers understand their role and responsibility in reporting claims to InterCare and helping to facilitate benefits and return to work for our injured employees. This past fiscal year, InterCare and the division completed virtual workers' compensation 101 supervisor training for all of our workers' comp liaisons, for ESD, for the airport, for PRNS, and for Public Works. And the last bullet point, firefighter and police fast lane programs. These continue to be an effective program which pre-approves doctors at Kaiser to conduct all relevant diagnostic testing when warranted, to be able to provide physical therapy and acupuncture, and perform surgeries which help to expedite treatment and recovery and return to work for our firefighters and police officers by bypassing utilization review or UR approval process at InterCare. A total of 68 firefighters and 101 police officers utilized the Fast Lane program this past fiscal year. In the closing slides, I'll provide an update on our safety management system and health and safety programs. SMS, or Safety Management System, is a structured process in which safety is managed to ensure risks are identified and mitigated, and compliance programs, policies, trainings are in place to reduce accidents or injuries and their associated costs. It also involves management commitment and employee engagement. This slide highlights several of our safety and health and wellness programs. Regarding the first bullet point, safety officers, the city manager's office authorized the restructure of the division to have safety officers representing various departments throughout the city to have a dual reporting relationship with the department and the division. This restructure provides the division with increased authority and responsibility over city departments to further develop and implement a more robust, comprehensive, and consistent safety management system. Regarding the second bullet point, the division developed a safety scoreboard that includes departmental incidents or statistics like frequency and severity, trend analysis, and workers' compensation costs. These departmental metrics help to set meaningful goals and safety improvement plans. The purpose of the scoreboard, which will be distributed this fiscal year to management, will be on a quarterly basis. And again, it's to highlight the performance of the city's larger departments against the prior fiscal year. Regarding the next bullet point, citywide safety committee meetings, the division will convene a citywide safety committee comprised of representatives from each department in fiscal year 23-24. The goal of this committee is to ensure departments are aligned on the implementation of a citywide safety policies and programs and provide a forum to discuss broad safety program updates, best practices, and opportunities for improvement. The city's ergonomic program, the fourth bullet point, continues to evolve with the goal of improving employee education and training, thereby reducing repetitive motion injuries. The division is currently evaluating online workstation ergonomics training from different vendors to offer to all city computer users. In addition, ergonomic evaluations of employees' workstations continue to be completed by the division, by department-trained evaluators, as well as by a third-party ergonomist. Regarding the last bullet item, wellness. Throughout the last fiscal year, HR has launched several successful wellness campaigns, including Summertime, Walktober, and OLA Physical Fitness Challenges. These campaigns promoted physical activity and overall well-being, with more than 800 employees participating in each campaign. In May of 2023, HR hosted an in-person health and wellness fair, which drew participation from over 750 employees. The fair offered chiropractic adjustments, non-metabolic screenings, nutritional samples, and access to multiple wellness resources. To prioritize emotional health, HR transitioned to a new EAP, Employee Assistance Program provider, Concern, in January of 2023. Enhanced EAP benefits are now offered, including life coaching, a digital platform, an expanded network of providers, and specialty programs for first responders, resulting in higher utilization compared to the previous provider. HR also conducted workshops on stress management and hosted a meditation series in November and December of 2022, with more than 350 employees participating to learn relaxation techniques. So in conclusion and follow-up, staff will continue to focus on safety and injury prevention. Workers' comp expenditures for this past fiscal year finished below the adopted budget by $698,355. The restructure of the city safety officers will promote employee engagement and a culture of safety. And lastly, the division will continue to focus on settlements, CNR and STIPs, to further reduce projected ultimate losses and our open claims inventory. This concludes our presentation, and we'll take any questions that you have now. Thank you.
Thank you for the thorough presentation. We're going to see if we have public comment first.
There are no public comments. Back to the committee.
Okay, thank you. We have Councilmember Duan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report on the worker compensation. Regarding the fast lane, do you have soft copy so where a police officer or firefighter can get on there and understand the process from A through Z to get the help that they need? Because I know from previous past, a lot of, at least from the fire department, a lot of firefighters get lost in the system. And I'd just like to see, do we have anything new that can help?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Council Member. So when we rolled out the Fast Lane program with the fire department several years ago, we developed program materials, and we worked with the department and with the union to ensure that it was broadcasted to all employees and to help them understand the process and how to go about utilizing the Fast Lane program. The following year, we rolled it out to the police department, and I participated in a video that they now show to police officers during the academy to be able to help them understand how to use the Fast Lane program.
I wonder if that Fast Lane program, if I'm correct, you're implemented right into the academy training?
Sorry about that. Thanks for that question. Again, I would need to confirm with the department what the current process is, Council Member. But again, there are program materials on description and process. The fire department has a workers' comp liaison that coordinates medical care for all of the firefighters, and he educates them on the Fast Lane program, that if they elect to go to Kaiser, that they can utilize that program. Now, firefighters and employees throughout the city, they can choose to go to another doctor, to another clinic. But if they utilize Kaiser, then they can take advantage of that program.
Thank you. I move for approval of the worker compensation.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and then I'll call on Councilmember Batra.
I just want to thank for the report. The main reason I wanted was to make a motion, which is already done. So no further comment. And thank you for your focus on the safety and injury prevention in addition to taking care of the workers' comp. So thank you.
Okay, so we'll call for a vote before anyone else raises their hand. Can we, I'm kidding. Can we vote, please? Oh, Councilmember Torres has a question before we vote. Please, 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 please. Honestly, I was joking. I'll do it offline. Okay, he'll do it offline. We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, it's unanimous. Thanks. We're going to move on to the next report. Thank you so much for the information. We're going to move on to item number 5, recruitment, hiring, retention strategies, quarterly status report. Jennifer stays.
Yes.
And then we have Lynn and Randy. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Shembry, Director of Employee Relations and Human Resources. I have with me here today Lynn Lee, who is our Employment Division Manager, and Randy Perry, who is our Program Manager over Learning and Development. And I'm actually going to pass the presentation on to them as they manage the day-to-day work of the amazing teams that are doing, as you can see from the memo, just amazing work throughout the city. We also have some of our department partners here who have assisted and worked on some of the things we're going to be talking about in case there are questions. So also very grateful for them.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon, committee chair and committee members. At the end of the fiscal year, our vacancy rate was 12.4%, which is only slightly higher than the end of the previous fiscal year, 21-22. Oh, sorry, I think I went too far ahead. Despite adding 237 positions, this stability is a direct result of us filling vacancies while the city experienced the typical separations such as retirements and resignations. This is a more detailed look at our vacancy rate on a monthly basis. While there's still a lot of work to do in order to meet our goal of a vacancy rate below 10%, we are heading in the right direction. At the beginning of the fiscal year, our vacancy rate was 14.5%, and we ended the year at 12.4%. We're missing a slide. Okay, sorry. While voluntary resignations have remained fairly stable, there was a notable decrease at the start of the pandemic and then an increase, which coincided with the Great Resignation that impacted many industries nationwide. At the end of the last fiscal year, resignations decreased to align more with the pre-pandemic numbers. Committee member Batra, at the last presentation, you had asked about separations by type. In addition to the 271 voluntary resignations, there were 42 separations for cause, 186 retirements, and 6 others, which included deaths or committee and board members ending assignments. So this brought us to a total of 505 total separations. In the last fiscal year, we hired more externals than the 5 preceding fiscal years. In addition to the total budgeted hires of 1,293, we also hired 1,173 employees into non-budgeted positions. These included part-time, unbenefited positions such as library aides, pages, rec leaders, and community service aides, which have a significant impact on library and PRNS service delivery to the community. Filling these non-budgeted positions take the same effort and time as budgeted positions. In order to recruit qualified candidates, having updated classifications is extremely important. Our classification unit consists of a program manager, 1 senior analyst, and an analyst. They are tasked with leading and working with departments and at times consultants to update classifications or to write new classifications. One strategy to increase the applicant pool is to broaden the minimum qualifications, specifically the education requirement, by allowing for additional experience to substitute for the education requirement or allowing the education to substitute for the experience requirement. The goal of the centralization pilot was to analyze how the HR department can streamline, add support, and reduce vacancies with direct reporting to HR employment. We hired a program manager, 2 of 3 analysts, and 1 staff specialist in April. And actually, we just hired our 3rd analyst who's starting in about a week. The role of the team is to increase department's capacity by leading recruitments and to provide increased direction and guidance for recruitment strategies. In 5 months' time, which included a training period, the team in HR and PRNS recruiters have reduced PRNS's vacancy rate by almost 2.5%, from 22 to 20. 5 of 6 code enforcement inspector vacancies have been filled, and for housing, almost all vacant positions are in process. As mentioned in the last update, a large part of modernizing the recruitment process is the implementation of a new application system. NeoGov is the #1 public sector job site. With many neighboring jurisdictions already using NeoGov, the city will have access to 1.5 million candidates as applicant information can be easily transferred to similar roles across jurisdictions, making it easier to apply to city opportunities. Would you play the video, please? We have a short video to give you an overview of NeoGov.
All right, good afternoon, council members. My name is Randy Perry. I'm the Learning and Development Program Manager in Human Resources. And I think, will my button work after the video? Can we go to the next slide? All right. We continued, in partnership with the City Manager's Office of Communications, we continued the hiring campaign from the spring with uniform branding for all city recruitment and hiring. In addition to the social media posts, both paid and unpaid, we also ran radio advertisements on iHeartRadio. We had 2 15-second advertisements and 1 30-second advertisement that ran, and I'd like to play one of those radio advertisements for you now.
The city of San Jose is now hiring. Be part of the change you want to see in one of the nation's largest cities. Enjoy a competitive salary and benefits, including pension plan and job growth. Apply today at sanjoseca.gov/citycareers.
All right, we introduced this study conducted by Deloitte in 2022 to demonstrate that the workers' values have shifted. And I'd like to highlight how the work that we're doing to attract and retain public sector employees aligns with what the research is telling us about what our workforce values. Work that works for me highlights that our employees value a culture of respect, inclusion, and belonging in the workplace. So here at the cities, one of the ways that we are trying to build that culture is through RISE, resilience, inclusion, support, and equity. We went through phase 1 of our trauma-informed care work that included the Human Resources Department and the Office of Employee Relations, and we just kicked off phase 2 of that trauma-informed care work. That includes 3 teams, one team from the Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services, one team from the Department of Transportation, and one team from the San Jose Public Library that will receive that trauma-informed care training over the next several months. Our workforce also continues to seek more agency and autonomy in their work, so we're providing several professional development opportunities for those employees, and in the interest of time, I'll skip through that pretty quickly. And the HR department is also very proud to host the city's citywide mentoring program, where we partner one mentee with a mentor in a different department that they do not work in. Many of your staff members in your council offices are participating this year. I was very excited to see that. They just kicked off that program in the next door in the rotunda, and unfortunately, I couldn't clone myself and be in 2 places at once, so we had to miss that kickoff, but I'm sure that they had a great time. And next, highlighting a little bit of work of our pipeline team. They have been very busy. We hired 2 new analysts that started on August 21st, so they are exactly 1 month in today, and in 1 month they have already met all of our partners at San Jose State, at San Jose City College, at Santa Clara University. They're planning some field trips for our high school students and doing a lot of work to attract our younger generation here to public service work. We are also happy to report that in June, we signed a university organization agreement with San Jose State University, allowing their students to earn college credit for internship experiences here at the city. This agreement will allow any department throughout the city to provide valuable work experience in the public sector for our student neighbors next door. Several departments have already hired interns under this agreement for this academic year. So our next steps is that we will continue to monitor and report out on the progress of the centralization pilot, continue the hiring campaign through December, targeting our hard-to-fill positions. We're going to advertise that San Jose State University organization agreement to our departments and support them in the development of internship programs throughout the city. We also ask that we can return to the committee to report updates twice per year. And with that, we will take questions.
Thank you for the report. We're going to go to public comment, see if there's anyone.
There are no public comments. Back to the committee.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councilmember Torres, please.
Great. No questions, just because I know we still have one more presentation. Just continue to create a pipeline from our 4-year and 2-year institutions and other educational agencies into our workforce. I think that's incredibly important. Many of the students at our 4-year institutions, especially San Jose State and San Jose City College, are first gen, and they want to come in and work for our city, and we shouldn't just create more layers and bureaucracy. They should just be able to slide right in and be part of our workforce. So please continue to do that, and with that, I move to approve item.
Second.
Wow.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. We're going to go to Councilmember Batra.
And I wanted the opportunity to be able to do a move, but Councilmember Torres got that, so we'll leave it that. I thank you for this report, because this has a lot of the good stuff which we talked about was part of your plans, and now they are a reality. I particularly like that you have separated the information about how the vacancies arose, whether they were added on people or whether they were retirements and others. That helps us focus that are we losing people to other agencies and all that, so we can modern. The second one, which was last time also I complimented you on, that you have modernized made the recruitment similar to the people who we are trying to recruit. So doing it the old style does not work for the millennials we are trying to hire. So commendation for doing that. And the other one which you done is develop the partnerships, which we commended you on before with multiple partnerships for our sources. And that helps us get those numbers which you have increased already. And the last one, which we have not talked about before, but it became very apparent that some of our employees, maybe few of our employees, don't feel very valuable. They're not respected, they're not valuable. And I'm glad that you're sending the message about that San Jose values its employees, and you have a valuable contribution to make. And I think that's very good as a tool for recruitment and for retention and for satisfaction of the employees. So thank you for making progress in all of those dimensions. And I would see that our goal of 10% below vacancy rate will soon be accomplished with all the efforts you have put in. So thank you for all the work you have done. Yeah.
Thank you. We have Councilmember Vice Mayor Kamei.
I'm going to be very brief. I just wanted to recognize the challenges that you're facing and how much work you've done. And I just want to say thank you.
I'll say the same thing. Thank you so much for that. I know this isn't easy work, and we always struggle to keep folks employed and hire new folks. And we've talked numerous times, closed session, out of session, just about the importance and how to be more effective at that. So thank you. With that, we'll take a vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you so much. We'll move on to our last and final item, which is City Manager's Office of Emergency Management Work Plan Priorities Annual Report. It's a mouthful. Welcome Ray and Jay, or Jay and Ray. From San Jose, correct. You knew where I was going. So take it away whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Chairman, Committee Chair, members of the committee. I am Ray Reardon, the Office of Emergency Management Director, and we annually come to this committee to report on accomplishments over the last fiscal year and what our targets are for the next year. I do want to note that the success of the Emergency Management Program is related to the hard work of the Emergency Management Work Group, which is representatives of all the departments that come together to help us accomplish these goals and objectives. The report is presented to acknowledge the work of the Office of Emergency Management and the Emergency Management Work Group in these 4 category areas, or what's also known as objectives and key results. First, the city has a plan to tackle any emergency. Second, the residents, businesses, and employees are ready to take action and able to answer a call to duty. Third, the public trusts the city to provide vital information. And fourth, our response is optimized through technology. In the interest of time, we'll just hit on one highlight area so that we get through this presentation a little quicker. So in the area of the city has a plan, we completed an after-action report from our response to COVID, which was quite lengthy. It was accepted by the council in March, and it does identify areas of improvement and actions that we'll be taking over the next several years to fill the gaps in response. In the area of a call to action, we activated the Emergency Operations Center on December 30th, proclaimed a local emergency on January 3rd, and deactivated the Emergency Operations Center on January 16th due to the multiple atmospheric river events that occurred. The City Council ratified that proclamation of a local emergency on January 10th, and that local emergency was twice extended as we continued to have issues with the rains going through. We evacuated unhoused residents along the Ross, Los Gatos, Fisher, Coyote, and Penitencia Creeks in the Guadalupe River. because they were threatened by the life-threatening harm of the sudden high flow during those storms. We activated shelters to support those evacuees and followed that up with evacuation transition facilities. We enjoyed that so much, we did it again in March when the storms came through in March. In the next area of the public trusts the city provide vital information, of course, we issued emergency notifications during that whole event, and that was very successfully done using our wireless emergency alert system, as well as our portable long-range acoustical devices to get the word out. And then with the fourth opportunity, the optimization of our response through technology, we did complete an installation of a 137-foot monopole with 35 antennas to support 30 different modes of communication in the Emergency Operations Center. It is truly a marvel. You need to come out and see it when we open it. And I'll turn it over to Jay.
All right, thank you very much, Chair and council members. I'm just going to go really quickly over a few points looking forward. The first one under City has a plan. We're going to reconvene the Emergency Services Council as needed to address much of the work that we're doing, to include ordinance updates, managing the disaster volunteer disaster service worker program, which we have several, and for overall plan approval. Under call to action, we will continue to deliver the SERP program, which you're all aware of, at the pace that we have been providing it. It's been very successful, and we're going to try to keep up with the demand because as we get out there, we're finding that more and more people want to engage in it. So that will continue. Under the public trust the city to provide vital information. One of the key programs that we do is to provide public education in the area of preparedness on a variety of different community events, presentations, and programs. I am not aware in the last 5 years that I've been here that we've ever turned down a request for that type of information with any group. And finally, optimized through technology. We're going to continue our work in completing the new Emergency Operations Center project to include all of the technology that Ray already mentioned. It is going to be action-packed, and we can't wait for you to all come by and take a look. Thank you.
And with that, that's our report, verbal report. You have the written report in front of you, so this is the recommendation to move forward.
Yeah, thank you for that. We're going to go to public comment, but there are some speakers and questions we're going to have. Go ahead.
Zoom caller Blair B.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks a lot for this item. Thanks a lot for the words of Ray Reardon. I see him at, he's the representative for San Jose for Bayouasi federal meetings. That's the agency that funds our local communities often with technology and concerns and needs. It was a fairly good report they just had in September. You know, community disaster preparedness things was pretty mellow. It didn't have anything major to report. So I'm getting a feeling that, boy, all my worries the past few years now about earthquake in the fall of 23, it won't be happening. No one's ever positive about these things, but it really seems it's not going to be happening. And that's good to know. And as always, we have to be preparing for these things. There's a new Emergency Operations Center for San Jose opening up soon. To be aware of that is important. How we can have more accountable practices, how that can be an accessible process for the public. Good luck in those efforts, and good luck with making interoperability.
Paul Soto.
Yes, Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. I'd like to know what you're doing to give access to neighborhood associations. They know their neighborhoods, the barrio, and the people in them, and what the weaknesses and strengths of their barrios are. So what I'm looking for is direct access lines of communication that are specific to the neighborhood associations in the event of a disaster, because it's not going to be a question of when, if, but when. And so I think the more that you prepare the neighborhood associations specifically, you can do the general advocacy piece is just, for the city to be informed. But the neighborhood associations specifically, because these are people that have formed these organizations, they're homeowners in their organizations, and they've been there in those areas.
Back to the committee.
Okay, we're going to go to Councilmember Batra.
Thank you. I'll get a chance this time to be able to make the motion. I've been trying to do that for the last 5 items. I didn't succeed. Thank you for giving me that opportunity this time.
Well, you can always just say, I move to approve. You don't need to push the button.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm just saying.
I do have a question about the emergency preparedness CERT program. How is the CERT program? I know in my district we got 148 CERT members out of a total of 1,000. How is it working out in some of the underserved communities in districts?
It's working quite well. We're partnered with Project Hope, and we have done several course offerings of the Community Emergency Response Team program in those communities. So we're making sure we're outreached into those areas. We doubled our effort this last year, and that was purposely focused on those communities.
Okay, yeah, that's good, because in a community like ours, we got a lot of people, and as we have discussed with you before, that we're going to do the refresher come some kind of a reception to bring all those people together to keep them up to date. So thank you for all the support you have given me in those meetings relating to the CERT program. And I do make a move to accept this report.
Second.
You see how that worked? You just
Thank you.
I've given you a hard time. No, yeah, but we're not super formal. So anytime you want to move something, just say it, and then we'll. But we have a few other speakers. Vice Mayor Kamei.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the wonderful programs. I think that I really think it's important to tackle any type of emergency that may arise, and some of them are, much more disastrous than others, but, they're at different levels. One of the things that occurs to me is that communication, as you know, is critically important, especially when something happens. And I remember a few months ago when there was a power outage, and the West Side residents were not really, aware when is something going to happen. I mean, they went to the PG&E website and all of that, but I think that I would like to find ways to communicate to neighbors. I know Paul Soto mentioned the neighborhood associations. I think that we have to find alternative ways to be able to communicate what the city's doing, what PG&E was doing, or whoever the entity. It could be water, it could be flood, it could be anything. But as a vehicle of knowing and understanding where are we going to get the best information. I know that my office tried to, through social media, let people know. Perhaps that's the way, I don't know. But, when you don't have, for days, any knowledge as to, is the power going to come on? Is it not? What areas and what quadrants and all of that? I think that there's a little bit of a scramble to address that. And so on the communication front, I think that I would like to see what we can do, and maybe even using the council offices to help disseminate some of the information out might be helpful. I know that there were lights that just didn't have power, and it was just totally dark. We ran out of those A-frames that say stop, to make people stop. So there were situations where, I was driving down Saratoga Avenue, and it was so dark, cars kept on going. They wouldn't even stop. And I'm like, oh man, that's not very good. So I just want to be able to address different situations and how we get the word out.
We can certainly take that as a action to look into as to what we can do for those smaller events.
Right.
But certainly we're focused on the larger events, and some of that work will transcend to those events. So we'll see what we can do about that.
I know you're absolutely great, you know, in terms of floods, earthquakes, you know, things that are very major, but you know, I think that power outages are going to happen. Yeah. And this power outage happened to be over a series of days. I mean, it wasn't just, you know, a couple hours, it was days. And as we have to deal with climate change and whatever happens with poles coming down or trees falling over, I think that we definitely need to be prepared for greater frequency of those types of events. They're smaller events. They may be only for a specific geographic area in the city, but I think that they're important as well to provide that communication to go out to neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We're going to move on to Councilmember Torres.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I've asked the chair and as well as our assistant city manager that we should have a full presentation on CERT. I think CERT is an incredible program that connects neighborhood associations and business districts on how to deal with emergency preparedness. And so that's why I've reached out to our chair and our assistant city manager, and I just want to know is there a plan to have a full presentation for CERT to relieve the concerns of Paul and folks on the committee?
Yeah, I think we were going to put that on the work plan between January and June. So one of those meetings where we can do a deeper dive into that. I think we'll be covering what the CERT program does and how all of you, as well as the other council offices, can get the word out, because you guys are pretty full participants in that. I don't think we'll actually do the training itself, but we'll do a deep dive into there. And there's a variety of programs, CERT and a few others intended, where the general public have a total right, and we encourage them to go.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a Councilmember Duan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Do you have a program to communicate to different communities, or, for example, District 7, we have 90 different precincts plus. Now, is there a communication or at least a magnetic on the refrigerators that, hey, if you live in this particular neighborhood, this is where you go when you're in need of something regarding emergency, for like the fire station or community center? They'll have an idea of a place to go if there's a mass disaster, if you will.
The challenge of pre-identifying a specific facility for people to go to for what they could be going into the emergency, and that's the last thing we would want to do. So we do put education information about listening to for the WIA alert and signing up for the WIA alerts or the Santa Clara County alert system. We can get information directly to them as to where to go. And then secondly, we are embarking on implementing the Zone Haven system particularly for evacuation protocols. And there will be zones that they're assigned, and that could be an area where we can, as part of the public education, put together some sort of whether it's a magnet or other tool that they can have that tells them you're in this zone, go to this web page for this information for evacuation orders.
Thank you, Ray. That's all I have.
Thank you. I just had one question. Well, yeah, I guess it's one question. You know, in the memo and then in the slides, you mentioned I assume I believe you're coordinating with the housing department to open up cooling centers. I know obviously when it gets cold out, there's warming centers. Can you talk briefly about how that coordination sort of plays out?
So it's a great question. The way the cooling centers are activated during heat events is we start working with the National Weather Service several days ahead of time, work with the county and their counterparts, the public health department, et cetera, in identifying what are the right trigger points to determine when to activate those centers. So it's typically over 92 degrees for multiple days, and it's not getting cool at night. Those are the typical triggers. And then we work together with the county, our housing department, our parks department to open up either cooling centers in the community centers or in the libraries. And it's a collaborative effort between us all.
Okay, and then for the warming centers?
Same thing when it gets
right?
but the opposite, when it gets to a cold.
And so in the end, who is it that determines where these cooling or warming centers are? Is it your office? Is it the housing department? I mean,
It's coordination with the housing department and the parks department is what facilities are closer to those areas of need.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right, thank you, that's helpful. Because the reason I ask is sometimes during, when it's hot or cold, I sometimes get texts or messages from people out in the community watching what's happening, and they're saying, hey, why don't you open up the community center? And then, you know, it gets on my radar, but I know that housing is the natural person or department to reach out to, but I often don't know who's really making those decisions, and I didn't think actually that your office was engaged with that, so now I know that I can bug you if I need any
You can certainly give me a
insight.
call. Yes.
We've tried to rotate the community centers and the libraries that are used. Some are better facilities some are actually better for warming facilities, and some are better for cooling, quite frankly. But we do try and rotate those around, but then also make decisions where the populations are so that the travel and the ease to get there is easier for those individuals.
Yeah, okay, it makes sense. Thank you. Right. All right, so there was a motion and a second, and we'll go ahead and take a vote. All right, it's unanimous. Thank you so much, Ray and Jay. Appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and move on towards the end of the meeting. We have open forum. See if there's public comment.
Blair B.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Thanks for the meeting. Yeah, I'm going to review certain items of the meeting today that may have been kind of interesting. Thank you. I'm trying to create a build-up to learn to talk more about the day of 9/11 and exactly what happened. I think people in public safety would be interested to hear kind of what people's ideas and feelings of what could have been on that day. I guess the idea is to describe my own ideas and feelings of what happened, see if that can fit into a narrative that I think others are having and feeling, but can't quite express openly. I think we have a real issue with that. I think we need to learn to stop, snickering about it and have little whispers about it and learn how it can be an open conversation towards the concepts of healing, peace. I think if we work towards understanding the day better, we will make better decisions in our future that will involve less amounts of war and practices of peace and dialogue as how to address our issues. So it's important for myself to work on it. It is UN time. The work I do with tech accountability, we can go to the UN and start asking them, hey, can you guys start being a bit more accountable with us as well? So, I mean, this tech accountability has a number of ways it can work really positively in our future. So I'll hopefully be able to talk more about this subject as we go on. And again, a reminder in the work of Paul Soto, thank you for letting Paul at least speak at public comment over Zoom. It's helpful. I like hearing what he has to say. I'm coming on a little strong about words of counseling for Paul. He may not want that or need that, but it certainly should be the idea and choices we should have instead of the concepts of jail. And we really have to be considering that, not to be doing that to Paul anymore. Paul deserves much better. I maybe not fully understanding the situation.
Blair, I'm going to have to cut you off. I think you're talking about a member of the public. But thank you so much for your comments today, and look forward to hearing about you next meeting. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. And that brings this marathon meeting to an end. And I would just end by saying, CED, eat your heart out. Is there another public?
No.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.